Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update on Dryden Gold Corp. Dryden Gold is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker DRY and on the OTCQB under the ticker DRYGF. And I'm joined today with the president of Dryden Gold, Maura Kolb. And Maura, it's great to have you on the show as always. And we're doing this as a video today to dig into the news that you put out to the marketplace on the 12th of November. And the news is basically that you've tripled the scale of the Elora Gold system. So the Elora Gold system, just for people watching here, is part of the Gold Rock camp, which is part of yet an even larger district scale camp that has three regional areas. And we'll dig into all that in the call here, but we're going to kick it off with just a summary of the results from 2025, at least the results that are in. And you can see a visual there of all the different drill holes, and the company's been very busy. So, Maura, give us a quick synopsis of what happened this year in the exploration program.
Thanks. It's so nice to recap here close to the end of the year and just look back at the successes we've had and how much this thing has grown. Um, it's exciting. We started off this whole exploration adventure, I call it, with three zones. So I'm going to flip to another slide and just show you where we started back before any drilling was done by Dryden Gold. We had three different zones: the Elora, the Big Master 1, Big Master 2. We had a hypothesis of the controls of mineralization in this area. There's a D1, which is kind of east-west, and there's a northeast southwest trending structure. We thought the intersection, that's where the high grade had to be. And we really only had those three zones. As we've drilled through 2025, as we relogged, as we did mapping, we started to realize there is a much bigger story here. There are more zones than these three we knew about. They are what we call hanging wall and footwall zones that kind of sit on either side of those. And we really started to understand the strike continuity. So I'm going to switch slides here again. And now we're looking at the same area, but look at all those dashed lines. Those are new zones that we found through the relogging, through the mapping, through our own sampling. Because with Dryden, we're doing what we call oriented core. That means we actually get the true orientation of each of the drill holes. So we know where the bottom is, we know where the top is, north, south, all of that, which allows us to really measure things and understand what orientations, what the geometries are. We also do complete sampling. So that means every meter of core that we drill, we actually send half of that off to the lab to get how much gold is in it, what other metals are in it, all of that, so that we really understand what the potential is. Through that, we found all of these additional structures. So now we just have a plethora of targets to go after here in the Gold Rock camp, and it's exciting. It's exciting because it's the same 1 by 1 kilometer footprint that we were always looking at, but now, oh gosh, there's, I don't know, 10 different mineralized structures to target. We're still working out the strike extent of them, but they seem to be pretty continuous along this D2 or the Manitou to Norwick deformation zone trend. So yeah, it's thanks for asking that question. It's pretty exciting to see the progress we've made this year.
Well, maybe just spend a little time for people that haven't been following along with the new understanding of the D3. You talked about the D1 and the
Yeah.
D2. The D3 is really this new understanding you had about how the faulting works and how some of these high grade pockets maybe aren't exactly where you thought they were. Now there's all these additional parallel trends.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, as we kind of tested our hypothesis with the two orientations, we did a mapping program where we looked really in great detail and noticed that there was what we call an echelon, but really it's a third deformation event or a third deformation part of the event, which kind of creates like these triangles, which offsets things a little bit, but also creates great high grade structures. I'm going to switch in a second to what we call a long section, which will be looking up and down the Elora Gold Shear, so part of the Elora Gold system, the wide shear zone mineralization. But you really start to see the impact of these three different deformation events in the geometries we see. So the really important thing for us was that went from having kind of high grade shoot structures because the two intersections would create basically a line where it's a high grade vertical structure. Um, and that changed the story completely. So I'm going to switch over now to a long section. And remember, we're just looking at one of these mineralized structures, right down this particular one that is the Elora Gold Shear. And this is what it looked like from our first interpretation based only on historical drilling. So some of this was from the early 90s. a little bit of 2000s, but all historic core where we hadn't touched and felt it ourselves. So we thought we had two basically vertical structures parallel to each other. And one of the goals for me was to say, how can we control the high grade and how can we start to predict it? Well, as we drill tested this and to take all of our structural measurements, started to really play this together with the D3, if we look at where it is today, you'll notice there's a lot more of the pink and the purple. Hotter colors are better in this situation. We're looking for 10 gram meters or better with the pink color. And that's really starting to show potential for economic mineralization here because you want something wide enough to be able to mine it either from underground or, potentially because it's all close to surface in an open pit sort of scenario with bulk tonnage. And that gets exciting when we talk about all those stack structures because that fills in that 1 kilometer footprint. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So back to the D3 structures on this. You're starting to see a more horizontal kind of trend here in the purple. The purple is over 30 gram meters. So it has more width and more high grade to be able to get that gram meter intercept. So why is that important? Well, we see another trend there. And now we're really starting to test that. It's exciting how much this has grown because 3 vertical structures, more difficult to make sure that that could be economic with having, much bigger footprint of the higher grade here. That really gets exciting for the mineability potential and for us targeting these parallel structures that we've discovered.
Well, it seems like between all the different targets you've gone after, because you did go after some targets near the Laurentian mine, which is a historic mine, but this Elora-Jubilee historic mining area, and the Pearl target, which you came into the year with a different name there, was the intersection target. So now it's the Pearl target. But this area between these two seems like this is where the center of gravity is for this particular part of the trend. Maybe to speak about any follow-up you'll be doing to keep testing the envelope here.
Yeah. Well, you can see on this long section, there's clearly some areas that haven't been tested at all. This area where it says open, we're planning drill holes to be able to test through there because hopefully there will be more high grade based on this kind of horizontal trend that we see in the very wide and higher grade mineralization. There's lots of open signs pointing deeper. We've really only tested very shallowly at the Pearl target. And the reason that was originally called an intersection was we were hoping that the D2 and D1 intersection would be fruitful there. And obviously it has with 2 kind of more vertical structures. And hopefully we'll also start to see these horizontal, very, good grades there as well. And if we were to expand this image out to the north, that's where we would start to get closer to the Laurentian mine. It's just off this page, unfortunately. But one of the things we're working on now with the drill holes that we went all the way across the trend and some of the ones that the shorter tests we did up to the Laurentian mine is there is something different going on there. We saw a big fault structure. So the team is working right now, kind of, I call it the cheap exploration, where we start to we model this in 3D. We have this program called Leapfrog where we can visualize everything and start to interpret what could be going on and really start to be able to predict things better. I like to save money, so I'd rather we do kind of all of our interpretation first, do that kind of nerdy time consuming work before we start predicting where things will be. And as you can see on this long section, we do have lower grade pockets as well. So I think it's very important we predict where the high grade is, obviously, but we also want to predict where the low grade is so that we don't have to drill test it. We can say, okay, we believe there's going to be a void here, a couple of holes prove that, and then we can really spend our money and our shareholders' money on high grade results and expanding and defining the high grade. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. We'll definitely be following up on this in 2026 because there's really some obvious targets on this. And we're using what we've learned here to predict this at the regional scale. And right now I'm starting to get results back in from Mud Lake. So you should see our Mud Lake results coming out soon. But that was our test on the deposit scale. So we've been predicting these high grade structures here, at the zone scale, as I call it. But now we've tested 2 kilometers to the northeast where there's another basically pattern, but at the, kilometer scale rather than the meter scale here.
Well, let's talk about that because what you said two interesting things there. One is that there's the low grade kind of halo in the some of those pockets between the high grade. That's still important for if it was an open pit scenario because it all ties together into, the continuity of the whole deposit. But we've been talking about a very small area, and if you look at the image, you can see down at the very bottom left-hand corner, the Elora-Jubilee and the Laurentian Mine and the Big Master area. That's where we were just talking about. This trend is actually 20 kilometers, but the next area of focus is Mud Lake, and those are the results that are pending. So walk us through what the team did at Mud Lake and why it's an exciting target.
Yeah. So this story kind of started back last summer in 2024, where we thought, okay, we see a geophysical anomaly. We start to see a little bit of anyway, similar repeating patterns, favorable host rock. So we decided to do a mapping campaign there, see if we saw the same sort of mineralization. What we saw in that mapping campaign, quartz veins on surface, looking very similar to the big master zones, which outcrop on surface as well in our quartz veins. So we've done 4 drill holes testing that. But in addition, we felt really strongly about trying to find where the shear zone hosted mineralization is, because that's our favorite at Gold Rock. The Elora Shear Zone has really wide, widths with good grade. So we also decided to add a mapping component into this summer campaign. And we tested further to the north to see if we found something, more similar to Elora there as well. So hint, hint, things will be coming out soon. I've just been getting all of that back from the mapping campaign just came in, and the drill holes. So that will be out in the next week or two. But we were really testing to see if there is a periodicity at this large scale. Why is that exciting? Well, you don't get enough ounces really to, I'm compared here on this slide to Red Lake. Red Lake has almost 30 million ounces between those 3 mines. And you can see in that long section, there's kind of a periodicity between the different mines of this repeating pattern of these, very vertically continuous zones. So we're optimistic that we have something similar like that here at Gold Rock, where we have Gold Rock, Mud Lake, potentially there's another geophysical anomaly to the north that could be important. But you've mentioned it. This is just, even on this slide, this is a few kilometers. We have 20 kilometers strike along this fold hinge access, this fold hinge within Gold Rock. So there's a lot of places where this could be repeating, which could make a very significant deposit. And when we talk about, results and why do we care about, growing at this scale? Well, that's really what the strategics of the world are interested in. Centerra Gold, which is our strategic investor, last year's Christmas presents, as I call it. They're really keen about what happens here at the district scale, because Dryden has no active mines right now, and we need to make discoveries and show that there's a true path here for a major or mid-tier company to come in and build something here. So I think it's really important that we continue to focus on Gold Rock, but we do need to make these new discoveries and show how big this camp could be.
Well, and maybe we should even peel back the layers even further here and show the district scale potential of the whole property package here. So I think that what has some of the majors interested and some of the big boy miners in this area being a potential camp and a district scale is that what we've been talking about thus far, Maura, is just the Gold Rock camp. And that's the 20-kilometer trend where you've only tested a few of these little areas. But then there's also Sherridon and there's also Hyndman, where your team did some work on both projects this year as well. And they're even different styles of mineralization. So you kind of got 3 flavors of mineralization on a huge land package. Maybe just a quick comment about how big this is and why this would interest a major.
Yeah, so we have a land package of over 70,000 hectares. That's huge. That gives us the opportunity to really own the district, so to speak. Yes, there's some other players here, but we feel we really have the most strategic land position. I've been talking about this Manitou Genoric Deformation Zone, but this black dash line is that structure. There's another older D1 structure that's more east-west trending. We have the most logistically favorable section of that at Hyndman. Hyndman, that target was discovered in 2023. We drove down one of the logging roads, took a sample off the side of the road. A 13 gram per ton surface sample just off the side of the road. And the Trans-Canada Highway is only a kilometer away from that. So it's a great location for something. We had some great results this year, 23 grams over almost 3 meters on channel samples. So a channel sample is where you saw the rock on surface so that you can get a sample along the vein structure, along the host rock and the shear. So you really get, a composite of this and see how wide these things are. So pretty exciting to be able to see that on surface. We didn't another thing people do is they'll strip, so they'll pull all the overburden, all of the the rocks, the trees, all the soil off. We didn't do that. We actually only went to areas that were already outcropping to do that channel sampling, just to get a better understanding of what was there. So that was just sitting there to be sampled. We're getting ready to drill test that in 2026 because we think, okay, if we have continuity here on this granodiorite intrusion, which is hosting this, that granodiorite intrusion is 4 kilometers long. So there could really be some exciting strike continuity and got to test that. It's too exciting. Then down at Sherridon, it's a very different beast. We see a really big fluid footprint. And what I mean by that is gold's carried in fluids and then brought up to these rocks that are closer to the surface. So we see a wide alteration halo there. We had some very broad zones of low grade mineralization. Now, that's not economically favorable, but I mean, 135 meters at 0.2 certainly is interesting. We're working right now to see what other metals could be associated with that. And do we have areas where that gets, a little higher grade where it actually would be very exciting for an open pit scenario? So very different deposits and a lot of potential in this land package. So thanks for bringing that up because it ties into the whole story of why we think Dryden will be, a district play.
Well, we're going to get into a lot of these areas in more detail in an upcoming webinar that we're doing on December the 4th. And so I'm going to put some of those details down in the show notes that go over how you can register for the event. And we're going to dig in deep on this webinar to the Gold Rock Camp and a lot of the drilling in more detail that you did this year. Maybe some of those Mud Lake results will be back and we can squeeze those into it as well. We'll dig into the results from Sherridon in more detail and the channel sampling from Hyndman. So we're going to dive deep into all three of these big regional targets and all the work the team did, and then a lot more about 2026 as far as what's coming. But maybe just to wrap us up, Maura, just maybe a quick snapshot of what's on tap as far as the news over the balance of the year and maybe anything you want to say about what's building towards next year.
Absolutely. Well, Mud Lake will be coming soon. As I said, it's all kind of come in. So working through interpreting it and getting that out to everybody to digest. We're working on what we want to do for 2026 exactly. We have great targets, obviously, here. We have several. So it's really a balance about, how much do we put into Gold Rock to keep expanding that? We want to make new discoveries. So we want to continue to push the envelope here of what could be here. And that really is exciting to our end buyer. We see the best opportunity for junior explorers is M&A activities. So we want to make sure that we are so to speak courting our future owners. So we want to make new discoveries here. So it's all a balancing act about how we do that. We always rate and rank the targets. So I'll have a few more strategy sessions with my geologists, and we arm wave and arm wrestle and come up with where we think the best targets are. So that'll all be coming out before the end of the year. We are still waiting for more of the geochemical results on Sherridon so we can speak to what type of deposit model that is. And into the new year, we'll kind of keep pushing these targets forward and have new results from 2026 coming pretty quickly into the new year.
All right, so a lot of news still on tap for the balance of this year, a lot of geological understanding and desk work to kind of unpack this year's exploration program. You guys have learned so much just this year, though. 2025 was really a transitional year for Dryden Gold, and 2026 is going to be an exciting year of following up on all these targets at all three areas. And so
Absolutely.
for those of you listening in, if you want to dig into that in more detail, again, click on the link down in the show notes. It takes you over to the webinar that we're holding on December the 4th, and that's at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern. So definitely check that out. And also click on the link down below in the show notes. It takes you right over to the news section at Dryden Gold. So as more news is released, you can follow along with it as it hits your email and get an update that way, or just follow along with the results as they come out to the marketplace. Maura, great to have you on the show as always, and looking forward to talking again in December.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.